Math is clean, math's easy when you're doing math with Miss Lee.
This is number 15 on the bottom of page 4 in packet 1, unit 2. I have the equation y equals negative cosine 1/2 x. So in this equation, a equals negative 1 and b equals 1/2. The amplitude is the absolute value of a, so the absolute value of negative 1 would be 1. The period is 2 pi divided by b. 2 pi divided by 1/2 is the same thing as 2 pi times 2, which is 4 pi. So the first thing I'll do is I will use the transformation method. So knowing what I know about the cosine graph, I have the same starting x values as I did for my sine graph. Those are just all the axis angles. And then I know that cosine starts and ends one cycle at the maximum. It hits the minimum in the middle between those, and it hits 0 between those. So according to the transformation method, the numbers in parentheses treat the x inversely. So instead of multiplying x by 1/2, like it looks like in the equation, I'm actually going to multiply the x's from the previous table by 2. So I'm going to double all of those x values. The y affects the graph the way it seems like it would, so that negative 1 multiplying in front of my equation is literally going to multiply my y's from my original table by negative 1. And then graphing from here, normally I make some dotted lines at the max and min. So these dotted lines are at y equals 1 and y equals negative 1. And then I show my graph from there. And then I'll label with my coordinates. So to make the second cycle, I'll just repeat the shape, and I'll make use of the period, which I know is 4 pi from earlier. So key point number 1 is also key point number 5 from the previous cycle. Key point number 2 will be 4 pi units past the first key point number 2. So pi plus 4 pi is 5 pi. Then key point number 3 will be 4 pi units to the right of 2 pi 1, and then add 4 pi to the next point. That's a 7 pi comma 0. And then add 4 pi to the next point, and I get 8 pi negative 1. So those are 2 cycles of the graph. Now let's say I repeated the whole process using the averaging method instead. So I would already know the amplitude is 1 and the period is 4 pi using the same method. I wouldn't use this first table. What I would do instead is to find the x values of the key points. I would set the parentheses, which are 1/2 x, equal to 0 and equal to 2 pi. Those are the original x values of key point number 1 and key point number 5. So multiplying on both sides by 2 in each of those equations to solve for x, I get that key point number 1 is at 0 and key point number 5 is at 4 pi. Then to find the other key points, you average the two surrounding them. So averaging 0 and 4 pi will give me key point number 3. Averaging 0 and 2 pi will give me key point number 2. And averaging 2 pi and 4 pi gives me key point number 4. So you can notice those are the same x values I had before. Then making use of the amplitude, I know that cosine is going to hit the middle value at key points number 2 and 4, and a is a negative number, so I know that it's going to flip the graph upside down. So I'll actually hit the minimum value at the first and fifth key points, and the maximum value in between those. And then again, I will do the same thing to graph this as I did the first time.